All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rhett, Chiu, an undergraduate business student in DLSU Manila, and this is actually my third time hosting for an event led by ASEAN Youth Organization at ESME.ph. And I'm truly excited because every time we have a webinar, there's a lot of learning going on. So with that, I will be your host for today. But of course, before we begin, if any of you have any questions regarding the discussion, don't hesitate to send them to us by entering it in the comment section of whatever social media platform you are watching this on. And of course, I will be here to relay them to our guest speaker. Welcome to the live webinar series of ESME.ph, an e-learning marketplace for Filipino professionals where one can develop relevant and in-demand skills through masterclasses in different fields of learning. If you want to know more about us, don't hesitate to visit our website at www.esme.ph. Once again, that's www.esme.ph. And for those who are watching this on Facebook and YouTube, hello, feel free to share the link to this live stream to the people who you think will be interested or will relate to our topic for today. Once again, this webinar is in partnership with the ASEAN Youth Organization, an ASEAN-approved nonprofit organization that spreads awareness of ASEAN to over 200 million young people in Southeast Asia. This webinar is also brought to you by the Rotary Club and Rotaract Club of Alabang Madrigal Business Park. Today, we will be talking about entrepreneurship and innovation. According to one of the articles written in Pagu.com by Amitabh Shukla last January 8, 2020, the importance of innovation and entrepreneurship is another key value for the longevity of a business. Entrepreneurs and businesses began with a need. They saw the need within the community, and among themselves, they come up with a solution. They seize the opportunity to innovate to make the lives more comfortable. And these solutions kept evolving to make it better, easier, and more useful. Entrepreneurs must keep themselves abreast with the current trends and demands. Manufacturers are constantly innovating to produce more without sacrificing the quality. With this, we will talk more about the relevance of innovation in the world of entrepreneurship and, of course, the importance of the connection between the two. On that note, we are in luck because tonight we will be joined by Mr. Talal Rafi. Talal Rafi is nominated as the Young Global Leader in the World Economic Forum for his work on inspiring, connecting, and transforming society for the better. Talal was part of an expert panel at Chatham House London, Royal Institute of International Affairs, with industry experts from Goldman Sachs and World Bank on the topic, the COVID-19 gender gap, how women's experience and expertise will drive economic recovery, on formulating the recommendations for the leaders of the G7 and G20 countries. He also consults as an industry expert under the World Bank AHEAD project at the Moratuwa University Entrepreneurship Center. He is also on the selection committee and jury panel of the Asian Development Bank Digital Against COVID-19 Innovation Series. An entrepreneur by profession, Talal was actively involved in many other fields. Following his education in London, he gained valuable experience in the emerging industry of electronic cigarettes, working in the City of London. With a focus on marketing and consultancy, Talal continued his experience in business in diverse sectors such as FMCG, real estate, insurance, and banking. So, without further ado, let us all welcome Mr. Talal Rafi.
Hi, thanks, Rhett, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. And I would like to thank the ASEAN Youth Organization, ESME Philippines, and all the other supporting organizations for this. So if I can start, the topic is quite interesting, entrepreneurship and innovation. So I always feel there is a connection between the two words. When you see entrepreneurship, it's all about somebody starting, taking risk, putting all their resources in. And at the same time, innovation is when you try to make something that's established better through either product innovation, process innovation, or the business model innovation. So there again, there's something to do with risk because you're trying something that few other people have tried. So both the words entrepreneurship and innovation have something together. to go with. And innovation is very essential for an entrepreneur. So before I go deeper into the topic, I'll just give a brief thing about my entrepreneurship journey. So after completing my studies in the UK, I came back to my country of Sri Lanka. And me and a couple of partners, we tried a few startups. We were involved in a few. And the most prominent of them was a co-working space. So I'll just give a brief thing about how we started the organization. So as you can, I want everyone watching this to imagine, one of the biggest problems when you're looking at a place, a location, would be all the hassle involved in it. So in Sri Lanka, we wanted to move into a new office, and we were going, and then we saw all the trouble. Like, you meet a different set of landlords, and then each of them have different personalities, and then what you see on the website is different to what you go and actually look in. And at the same time, there's this thing about negotiating the advance payments, the deposits, and at the same time, you have to bring in a lawyer to sign the agreements. And also, after you find a place itself, then you have the utility bills, and you have to find your own Wi-Fi connection, and the telephone connection, somebody to clean, the coffee. So there was a lot of problems associated with finding a new office space. So we thought, okay, let's keep whatever we are doing to a side for a moment, and let's try to solve this problem. Because after all, an entrepreneur should be someone who solves problems in society. So I believe that whenever we see a problem, we see it as an opportunity, as Jack Ma says. So there is an opportunity for an entrepreneur to try something out to solve the problems in society, and you can become extremely rich and help society at the same time. So this was our idea behind starting the co-working space Hub Point, which led to revolutionizing the whole Sri Lankan real estate space, especially with the proliferation of co-working spaces. So this, I felt, was one of our first example of where we brought in a business model innovation, where we went against the traditional model of finding a space from someone and then renting it out. But here it's like subletting. We get a space, we make all the everything related to moving into an office ready, and then the person just goes in. So with our model, if you have a business, all you have to do is just walk in, and then you find your office space already furnished, and you start working. So this was our primary thing that we wanted to solve. The pain point of the customer was he didn't have to have a lot of hassle. So this was our first one of our first startups after we did a couple. And the second one was more about process innovation, where we looked at the food industry. And when you look at the global trends, there's a huge trend moving towards healthy foods. So people are more conscious of what they eat. So though it's a very tiny fraction in Sri Lanka, in Europe, it's growing. But in 10 years, we feel like more and more people, there will be a much higher demand, because people want to know where their food came from, how healthy it is, what are the chemicals used, what are the fertilizers used. So what we decided to do was go into organic. Though our startup is quite small at the moment, we are looking to move into organic tea. So we have a small operations going on. So these are just two innovations related to entrepreneurship. I mean, can talk a lot more, but I just wanted to concentrate on where we innovated in our businesses, the kind of innovation we brought in. So with that, let me just speak about innovation. So when you talk, the question is, why is corporate innovation essential? Because when you look at a study by McKinsey, it shows that 84% of CEOs, I'm not talking about normal, but the Fortune 500 level CEOs, they believe that innovation is essential. And this is not surprising, because we all know that innovation is essential if you want to survive in this day and age. But what is surprising is that only 6% are satisfied with the performance of their team when it comes to innovation. So this is quite a bit hard to believe, because we're looking at not just normal companies, we're looking at Fortune 500 companies and some of the largest companies in the world who have some of the best talents at their disposal and all the resources. And yet 6% of the CEOs only say that they're satisfied with the kind of innovation performance happening in their organizations. So, and also to add to this, about 80% of these executives leading these large corporations believe that their business model is at risk. So this is quite dangerous, especially when you look at through the eyes of the corporate leaders. And why is this? Because one is disruptive innovation, but before that, there is another fact we have to note. According to a study by McKinsey, they found that in 1935, when you look at the large companies, the corporate lifespan of a company was 90 years. So that's nearly a century. So when you look at companies like Coca-Cola or Pepsi, General Motors, General Electric, these companies nearly survived for 100 years, or in some cases like Coke, more than that. But when you move into 2010, the corporate lifespan of a company is just the average. I'm talking about the S&P 500 companies is just 14. So that is a huge reduction from 90 years, the average lifespan of a company. It's come down drastically to only 14 years. And that is 2010. Right now, the average is much lesser. So from a company surviving for 100 years, now we've come to the stage where companies just survive for a decade, 10 years. So the reason for this is a disruptive innovation that's happening. So this is what's been a big problem for large corporations, especially like one of the things is when you talk about how innovation happens. Innovation is very high when it's a startup. So that's when there's a small team, everyone is like discussing new ideas. But as the companies become bigger, the process takes over. You know, the HR department, the finance department, everything, and they all start concentrating on the operational side. And there's more focus towards implementation and day-to-day running of a business rather than sitting and strategizing for the future of the business. So this means disruptive innovation is taking out a lot. For example, we can say like one of the largest companies like Kodak. I mean, they were running the film roll industry. And one of their engineers founded the digital camera. But their leaders, the executives at that time, didn't want to pursue that because they thought it'll cannibalize their own sales. But in the end, someone else brought through the digital camera. And today, Kodak doesn't exist. So unlike if you compare it to another company like Apple, like in 2007, was doing iPod sales of around $5 billion a year. But still, Steve Jobs brought in the iPhone, which was sure to cannibalize, reduce the sales of the iPod. At the same time, he was coming to a market. At that time, Apple was a small player in the phone market, and Nokia was the dominant player. So it was a risk. So unlike Kodak, Apple did it and succeeded. And today, it's the most valuable company in the world. So that's disruptive innovation. So though disruptive innovation is quite scary when you're the leader of a Fortune 500 company where innovation is a lot slower to implement. If you're a startup, it's something good because you can come up with an idea and you can disrupt the industry and become big. Examples are how Netflix disrupted the blockbuster industry, or how Uber disrupted the taxi industry, and how Amazon Go, which is can very well disrupt the whole supermarket industry. So I'll be talking about these things later. And so there's an opportunity for startups, you know, come up with something that can disrupt the whole business model, and you can become extremely successful. And so talking about innovation, I'll just give a brief thing about how innovative leaders think. So this is quite important for people who are watching. I want you all to, I'll give a few examples. So innovative leaders from studies show that they question a lot, and they're always experimenting. They network. Not just with the people they mingle with, but rather all kinds of different people. And they also get involved in the work they do. So talking about first someone, let's take the example of Elon Musk. He's always involved in the innovation process. He doesn't outsource it to some divisional head or some other person. He is part and parcel of Tesla's innovation. He gets involved, tries to solve the problems, tries to put up a strategy for the future. So this is one thing about Elon Musk and why Tesla remains one of the most innovative companies in the world. Another example would be Jeff Bezos. So here's a story like he's constantly experimenting. You can see by the kind of businesses he does. Though we know Jeff Bezos as the founder of Amazon, the largest e-commerce company in the world, he has also gone into space exploration. He's having another streaming company that's competing with Netflix, and at the same time doing a number of other ventures as well. So Jeff Bezos is someone who, the quality about him being an innovative leader is he likes to experiment. So this is like when he story like about him that's quite interesting is that when he was a small kid, he used to go to and live with his grandparents during the summer vacations. And there in the farm, when something things went wrong, like a tractor broke out or something broke down, his grandparents, instead of calling a mechanic or someone to fix it, they would all sit together and start experimenting until things came right. And this can be found in how Amazon came about. I mean, it took around 8 years for Amazon to get their business model right, because they were constantly experimenting, trying new things until they came right. So this is one thing. And another example would be Mark Benioff, Salesforce. He uses the thing like Steve Jobs, always questioning things, and at the same time networking with different people. So when I talk about networking, I'm not talking about speaking to other board members or people who speak and think like you, but talk to like everyone, maybe someone from the street or someone who is doing something totally different. So these are some of the things that bring out the innovation in leaders and make them really innovative. And so then coming on to the topic of corporate innovation or innovation. So there are 3 types of innovations. One is product innovation, process innovation, and business model innovation. So the first thing is, we all know, it's very common, and I don't have to explain much, is product innovation. It's when the product or the service is innovated. The best examples would be the iPhone. Like every year you get a better version of the iPhone, which is innovative with new features coming in. And another example is the Sony PlayStation. Like every 5 years, they bring something more innovative. The product is innovated. And so this is an easy example to understand. The second one is process innovation. So process innovation is like innovation in the supply chain, mostly like the process of where the products go. So giving an example, the best example would be the Spanish fashion retailer, Zara. Let's look at how traditional retailers work. Like if you look at the example of H&M, they have something where all the designs are created before the winter or the summer season starts, like nearly a year before, and the designs are sent to probably China and other countries where the clothes are manufactured and shipped back in. So there is always a lag between when the clothes were made and the time where it's out in the shelves in the retailers. What Zara does is quite different. Here we see the process innovation coming out. It's that what they do is they're more customer-centric, like focused towards what the customer wants. So when a customer walks into Zara, he either buys something, so where they know what the customer wants, or if not, he speaks to a salesperson and says what are his requirements, what he wants. And this is immediately fed into an IT system, which goes to 350 designers who work full-time for Zara in creating the latest trends, the fashions, what customers want. So this means they're very up-to-date. And another thing about their process innovation is that 80% of Zara's products are manufactured during the season. So if it's the winter season, 80% of that is produced during the season. And 20% is produced just at the beginning. So there is a very shorter lag time. So whatever the people want, whatever is the latest fashion is immediately in the stores, much faster. And this is the kind of process innovation that they bring. And they're a very good example of innovating their whole process. And this has a lot of advantage. People, they don't need to advertise for people to come in, because everyone knows that every 4 to 5 weeks there's something new and they constantly come in. And there's no discounts, and they make quite a lot of profits through this, which they reinvent. And even their manufacturing facilities are closer to the stores. So they either ship through planes or through trucks. So this makes Zara just an example of process innovation. And the last would be business model innovation. So this is where you innovate when what you're delivering to the customer, how you get paid, and at the same time, your target market. So there are a few examples I would like to share, and I like to talk about business model innovation a bit more. And the biggest example, and one of my most favorite example, is Netflix. The reason I talk about Netflix first is because Netflix is a company which does disruptive innovation. I mean, innovates its business model not once but many times over. When you look at how they started, at the time Netflix started, Blockbuster was dominating everything. They were renting out the VHS tapes, the video cassettes. And what Netflix did was they brought in a new business model where you have to go to Netflix's website and pick the movie, and they would post it. They would post a DVD. So instead of VHS, they moved to DVD because DVDs are much lighter and they can be put into an envelope and posted. So this was very innovative. I mean, it innovated the whole business model, and the revenues were increasing much more. People found it more convenient. I mean, they only have to be on a sofa and click on the website, and they get their favorite movies posted. So Netflix was growing, but what's interesting is they decided to bring business model innovation once again. They wanted to disrupt themselves once again, and they went into streaming. So they instantly became a household name worldwide, Netflix. So even now, when you think of streaming a movie, we say Netflix. So that was their second innovation. And yet again, they did not stop. They innovated once again. Instead of being a platform for hosting movies of other production companies, which is quite dangerous because anybody else can start a platform and make it cheaper and take revenue away from Netflix. What Netflix did was they started making their own content. So they started making their own movies, their own TV shows. And what is astonishing is that they spend a staggering $12 billion annually on creating their own content. So this makes Netflix one of the most innovative companies in the world. And another example of business model innovation is Uber. So when you look at how Uber came into being, it was the taxi industry. So as you know, before Uber, getting a taxi is you call the taxi company, you speak to a customer representative who then calls a taxi driver and then finds out where he is and when he can pick you. And he or she calls you back. And then there is always the anxiety of anticipating, not knowing at what time your taxi is going to arrive. So what Uber did was it solved this pain point of the customer. With Uber, all you have to do is touch the screen and you get your taxi. And at the same time, you know exactly at what time or roughly at what time the taxi is going to arrive. So at the beginning, what's interesting is that Uber was 1.5 times more expensive than traditional taxis, but people still preferred Uber because of the new business model where they know at what time your ride is coming and the convenience. And the third one is talking about Jeff Bezos once again, is Amazon Go. That's another great example of business model innovation that could very well take over the supermarket grocery industry. It's like Amazon decided to go into one of the most boring industries in the world, like supermarkets, groceries, which have remained like that for decades. So one of the points I want, like, you can imagine yourself going to a supermarket. What you find is you pick all your things, but still you have to wait near the cashier. Even if there's no queue, you still have to put everything on the counter. Then somebody will scan everything, and then you have to take out your card, pay, and then put your card back in, take your things in the shopping bag, move out. So there's a bit of something the customers don't like. And even if it's self-checkout, it's still the same thing. You have to scan all your things, put them in a bag, take out your card, pay. What Amazon Go is doing is very innovative. I mean, bringing business model innovation into this industry. It's all you have to do is scan your barcode at the beginning before entering the supermarket, and then you go in, you grab whatever you want, and then as soon as you leave the store, you get a receipt, and the sum is deducted from your bank account. So this reduces the hassle, especially like when you're going to the supermarket on a weekday, on a busy weekday during lunchtime. So these are three examples of business model innovation. I've written an article on Forbes, just talking in more details about these three companies, which you can read online. And so before concluding, I'll just speak about some of the things that are needed to have a innovative ecosystem. So some of the things would be, let's talk about like Silicon Valley, for example. You need to be in a place where there's a huge demand, there's consumer power. So that's one thing. And the other is infrastructure and capital. Silicon Valley has a lot of VCs and angel investors. And at the same time, you have to have a talent pool. So Stanford being there, I mean, and all the other universities give out a lot of talented, innovative students who come out and who want to start something good. And the last thing is culture. And culture is probably the most important one. The reason I say it's most important is it's hard to copy that, because a lot of other countries send expert teams into Silicon Valley to study the ecosystem there, so that they can take whatever they learned there back home and set up something like Silicon Valley there. So they can do the first four, but what's interesting is that they cannot do the fifth one. The culture is the most difficult to do. The reason is because it takes time to develop it, and however much people do, it's not sometimes possible to come up with it, because one of the key features about Silicon Valley is that the culture is open, and at the same time it's okay to fail there. You know, when you fail, you're not punished, but you're encouraged to start again even better, learning from the first failure. So with that, I'll just speak about, though I can give a lot of examples, I'll speak about one company which is quite innovative and one of my favorites. It's Google. Google remains one of the most innovative companies in the world. And that's because they have quite a culture built, and they encourage their people to be innovative. And the first thing is they do three things. One is Google is customer focused. So they have this thing which I find very interesting, is that they say when you're starting something, you have to have empathy for the customer. So this is quite interesting. You know, you have to feel sorry for the customer to solve their problems. So this means whatever you start, you're starting with the customer. And with the amount of data Google has and at its hand, it knows what the customer wants and what he or she doesn't want. So this is one of the first things. And example would be like when you look at Google's search page, it's updated every few months. Even when you feel like everything is going right, they still get their latest data and update it once again. So this keeps them up to date, up to trend with what the customers want. And the second thing is they have this thing where the workers are encouraged to innovate themselves. So this is not like many other companies who just say like, you know, we encourage people to innovate, but they don't follow it up with action. Google actually follows it up with action. So at Google, an employee is given 20% of their time. They're allowed to take 20% of their time off to work on a pet project. And they're given a space, they're given the resources, the data to test if that'll come successful. And if it's going well, even investment. So two examples are in 2004, an engineer at Google came up with Gmail. And today, Gmail has over 1 billion users. And the other example is Google Drive. So these are two things that came out of the innovation culture where Google encouraged its employees to be more innovative. So these are two out of many examples. And the third thing is they have this thing where people are encouraged to think 10 times. So when you want to innovate at Google, you're not encouraged to innovate like incremental innovation, which is like an innovation that will just increase sales or revenue by 10% or 20%. Whatever innovation you're bringing in, you're encouraged to think big. They want something that will increase revenue by 10 times. So even if it looks ridiculous in front of others, employees at Google are encouraged to speak out. So this is what makes Google one of the most innovative companies in the world. So with that, I'll conclude, meaning entrepreneurship and innovation go hand in hand, and innovation is very essential in this day and age, especially when there is a lot of disruption happening. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Talal Rafi. For those who have just joined us in our live session, hello, once again, we are having a webinar presented to you by ASEAN Youth Organization Philippines and ESME.ph with, of course, Mr. Talal Rafi. And our topic for today is entrepreneurship and innovation. Right now, we are going to be having a question and answer portion with our guest speaker. So, Mr. Talal, are you ready for your questions?
Sure. Yes, right.
Okay, so for the first question, a lot of us have been asking, when starting a business, what is the proper approach in innovation?
So where you can start is when you want to have a business and want to be innovative, it always starts with hiring the right people. So again, I just concluded, but to continue, talking about Google, they're encouraged when recruiting people, they want people who actually can think, like go against the status quo, like not, they will question whatever is the norm. So this is the same thing at Amazon or other companies. So where you can start is you should always start with recruiting the right people, people who would question you at the same all the time. And also there's a thing where you have a much flatter structure at the company. So this again results in a lot of innovation. For example, like a lot of companies, even in Sri Lanka, there is a lack of innovation because somebody at the bottom, mostly younger people who have innovative ideas, they are unable to put the ideas to the CEO or the chairman, because there is this thing where they have to report to their supervisor. Their supervisor goes to the person above them until by the time it or it never even reaches, because if one person in that chain of leadership decides that it's not a good idea, and then the idea gets dropped. So we always have to have a culture where everybody there is encouraged to speak out. A good example would be Amazon. Like at Amazon, people, an employee, whenever he has an idea, first thing is they're encouraged to check it up with all the data they have, whether it will be successful. And once that is okay, they have to get approval or consent from around 5 other employees. And after that, they're allowed to put a press release inside, an internal press release. This is interesting because it reaches the ear of the executives and probably even Jeff Bezos. So, and after that, they have a quick look and they're encouraged to go and start it. So this is the kind of culture I would say for a startup from the beginning to have in the company, because most of the innovation happens at the beginning. There's this thing by Bain and Company, the founders mentality, which where the interesting thing is most of the innovation happens at the beginning, because as companies become bigger, the process dominates it. It's more about the operations, the day-to-day running and implementation of whatever happens. So as companies become bigger, the innovation lessens. So it's always good to set in innovation at the beginning itself.
Thank you very much, sir. I do have another question. So, of course, entrepreneurship involves a lot of risks, right? And during now, in the time of COVID-19, a lot of businesses are closing. There aren't a lot of labor opportunities. So, I guess a lot of business owners are scared to innovate because they are scared of losing all of their resources. So, what can you say about that phenomenon? Should people stop innovating because of this time?
No, actually, a study shows that the most innovative companies who become successful, they double down. They spend more on innovation during times of crisis than not. Because an interesting thing is, like a study by BCG found that they were studying companies in crisis after the 2008 financial crisis, which found that BCG found that these were S&P 500 companies. Some of the most successful companies which came out very successful after the crisis were, during the crisis, they did not just wait. They were thinking about the future, long term. They had a vision. And at the same time, they were spending more and they kept cash at their hand. So they were ready. As soon as the crisis is over, they had more cash in hand. They were ready to go into bold new initiatives, which made them very successful in the outset. So for entrepreneurs, I would encourage them to be bold at this time, not take part in starting any things immediately, but plan for as soon as the crisis finishes what you can do, because that's one thing. And talking about other things, I would say about since we're talking about being bold, another study which is very interesting is by Deloitte, which finds that the most successful companies in the world have more in common with failed organizations than they have with average companies. This is because like successful organizations like Apple or Amazon have more in common with startups which have failed. Because the thing is, they tried something new. And in some cases, it came out right and they became trillion-dollar companies. And at the same time, things did not work out and they were not so successful. So to become someone extraordinary, you always have to try something new. So if you're going to do whatever everybody else is doing, you're not going to become very big. You just be the average person as always. So there's always an encouragement to be bold. And the other thing is be confident. So entrepreneurship is always about confidence, you're always swimming against the tide. So you need to, like, first of all, believe in yourself. That's what they say. However many times you fail, you only need to succeed once, and it wipes out all the other failures. And the last thing is face a lot of rejection. So a lot of people would come and say things. But what I want to tell you entrepreneurs watching this is that 90% of the people have good intentions, but it's just like a very tiny percentage who say negative things. But because they're so vocal, we think that they represent everybody else. So there are a lot of good people, and always network and reach out to people, and they will always help. So these are some of the advice I would give to entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much, sir. I've never really actually thought about how much confidence comes into play in business, but thank you so much for sharing about that. I do have another question. How does a business know when it's the right time to innovate? Because, of course, the longevity of a business is heavily reliant on consistently innovating. But is there a proper time to innovate?
As far as innovating goes, there's though there may be certain times, like for example, when you look at give the example of Netflix. So they've moved from posting DVDs to streaming. So there you can always argue that going into streaming wouldn't have worked if it was 1997, because they didn't have the infrastructure. Or at the same time, when you look at innovations like Uber, Airbnb, WeWork, these all came because of the 2008 financial crisis, when people were in a crisis. So this crisis gave rise to them. So there is also sometimes the thing about the timing also comes. But so there is some truth in the way that you have to have the right timing for the innovations to become successful. But what I would advise is always keep thinking of the ideas. Like at the same time, like Kodak, they did come up with an innovation. Their company, their engineer came out with the digital camera, but it's just that they didn't see it for the future. They didn't think the time was right. They still thought the film rolls industry would keep going. So there was a wrong thing. So though there is something to do with like the time and place of bringing innovation, I would say as a whole, companies should always be thinking long term, because we find that nowadays, again, a study by Deloitte, which finds that when it comes to the corporate boards of large companies, less time is spent on strategizing for the future, coming up with plans for the future. So we would say that there has to be a set of people who are constantly thinking about what are the latest trends. And one of the advices another thing I wrote on an article on Forbes is for innovation, you need to have younger people on corporate boards of large companies, because that's a very tiny percentage. Because now though I'm not saying I don't have anything against the older experienced people, we find that when most of the large companies have older people, it's like they're already successful and they have a mindset where they're talking with other and networking with other people who think like them. So having younger people is like they have more experience with the mainstream people. So that brings in something. So when you get someone like who is 35 years old onto a corporate board, he has more experience. He knows what's going on in the street, and he's not spending almost all of his time talking to other rich people. So these are some of the ways. And at the same time, diversity increases. So having people of different cultures. And at the same time, we need to emphasize on having more women on corporate boards, because they represent like over half of the world's population, and we can gain a lot of ideas from them, especially like with the Harvard study showing that women are better leaders than men. So with that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Actually, this webinar is actually targeted to the youth. Of course, we want them to learn so much from our webinar. So thank you so much for emphasizing our role in innovation in the business, and of course, in all of the fields you've mentioned. I do have another question. You mentioned a while ago, Google is really good at innovation. Do you think that there will ever be another Google? And if Google fails, what would be the reason why?
So there can that's quite something in the future, which honestly, like, I wouldn't have the answer, but it is possible. Companies can be disrupted because Google is very well a lot focusing. Most of their revenue comes from search. So though they have a lot of other things going on, they're still their main thing is at the core. They are an advertising company. So one interesting thing happened last month in the last few weeks is that now Apple is going into the whole search thing. So this could be quite disruptive because Google depends a lot on what you search and advertising targeting those searches. So with Apple coming in, Apple is going to have a search engine where there won't be that much advertising. So people who don't like to see ads, and Apple has a good following. So these people using Apple search engines to search could have a dent on Google. And at the same time, there is also like the US government is after Google at the same time because they think that they are a monopoly. So they want to break it up just like Facebook. So these are some of the dangers for Google. And the model could be disrupted. As I said, Apple, which has a following, can encourage their people to search with no advertising. So if a huge amount of people move into that, like even Samsung tries the same thing, that could affect Google in a way. But I'm sure like having the culture of Google, which a few others have, Google will come out on top because Google is one of my favorite companies.
Thank you so much for sharing your opinions on that phenomenon. And for our final question, what tips or final words can you say to those people who are planning to enter the entrepreneur industry?
That would just be a repeat of what I said. Have to be bold, give it shot. It's like, as I said, the most successful companies in the world have more in common with failed organizations. So you have to try something. So there has to be an acceptance of failure. You are bound to fail. A lot of people fail, and you can always come back. So even Steve Jobs, at the beginning, he was a failure. He got fired from his own company until he came back. He learned from his mistakes and came back and became one of the most successful people in the world. So always be bold and be confident, because there is, as I mentioned, the other thing is there'll be a lot of rejection coming in. People are going to doubt, and you're going to be doing some things which a lot of people would question. Why are you doing this? Why don't you just do this? Especially when you're doing something, if you're doing a normal thing that everybody else does, there'll be few things asked by people. But if you're doing something innovative, people are going to question. When you listen to a talk by the founder of Netflix, he says at the beginning there were a lot of doubters. They did not believe that Netflix could come out as a success. Or at the beginning, people wouldn't have believed that Facebook could have been a success. So things like that. So you have to believe in yourself and just keep innovating until things come right. And I'm sure they will if you are very determined and decide to go forward.
Believe in yourself and continue innovating. Thank you so much, Mr. Talal Rafi. And for everyone who have just attended this webinar, that concludes our question and answer portion with our guest speaker. And for those attendees, all of you can get a digital certificate of your attendance. For sure, you want to get yours. So if you do want that, just go ahead and visit our website at www.esme.ph or click the link that we posted in the comments section below. Make your own account and navigate to the title of the webinar that you joined in today's session. Once again, thank you so much, Mr. Talal Rafi, for your time and insight and very inspiring talk as well. Before we end, is there anything you would like to plug or shout out, sir?
Given the advice, and now it's time to implement. So that's the advice. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Talal. Before this webinar comes to a close, I would like to invite everyone who wants to learn more and increase their knowledge and skills to go ahead and visit our website at www.esme.ph. There we offer a wide range of masterclass courses, those of which you can enroll based in whatever you want, relevant to your passion, career, and interests. All right, once again, this has been Rhett Chiu. It's been a pleasure hosting your learning for today. We thank you for your time. So please stay safe, stay healthy, advance happy holidays, and we hope to see you again next time. Thank you so much.